Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Rotarians, Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, or ESRAG, was established to empower members of the Rotary family worldwide to take actions to sustain the environment, particularly to stabilize our climate. ESRAG promotes educational resources, initiates dialogue about environmental sustainability, and uses best practices in models and assessments for both projects and daily choices. This work advances the object of Rotary through the positive impacts in all 7 areas of focus. Ladies and gentlemen, I now bring you a special message from the founding director and chair of the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, Mr. Christopher Puttock.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you this evening, and the very distinguished guests we have tonight. I acknowledge you, and all the Rotary family that we have, particularly Rotaractors and Interactors, who we see as the future of the development of maintenance against climate change. And what I see is probably the most important thing is biodiversity loss. If I can go to my first slide. So we just heard about Bhutan, and one of the things I would recognize as similar to Bhutan is what these 3 polar bears may be thinking, looking out at where is the ice. And so I'd like to just address 3 things this evening: global warming, biodiversity loss, and environmental sustainability. So next slide, please. We have just seen a video, which I didn't know was coming, but I just segued straight from that into where we are with fossil fuels. We essentially are burning fossil fuels very, very rapidly. They were stored carbon and light over probably 300 million years. And we are burning that so rapidly within about a year's worth of stored light every 3 seconds. It's amazing how much we are releasing into the atmosphere right now of this carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. Next slide. So some of the consequences of this warming of the earth is that we have created islands. We've created, we have islands in the ocean, which are now going under the ocean, and because of the melting of ice and the increasing of the volume of the ocean. As water heats, it increases in volume. And so these islands go under water. We have islands in the sky. These mountains that we have unique vegetation and unique animals on the tops of them. When we heat the land below, these animals have no place to go. And then we've created islands in agriculture. Across probably something like 70% of the Earth's surface that we have now, we have used that for agriculture in some form, and we have reduced the forest that was there or the grasslands that were there. And now we have created islands in those spaces. And only 2 of these were really going to be climate change that affects them, global warming. The other is by cutting down of the landscape, cutting down of trees. I mentioned there 15.3 billion trees are currently being cut down every year. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? In terms of climate change, we're probably losing about 8% of our animals, our fauna and flora in the next 30 years. And the rest we are losing through habitat loss. We are continuing to lose habitat. We're removing ecosystem services, and this is by just human destruction. And out of that, of course, we're getting diseases. So some of the diseases are coming out, causing death to organisms like invertebrates. We're getting inbreeding depression because we've reduced the populations of species down to so small that they are inbreeding. We have resilience problems where we are meeting face to face with big animals that would likely kill us if we don't get out of their way. And then they usually don't come off better when we have guns to kill them. So there's a lot of human destruction. We are then also responsible for a lot of plastic filling virtually every space that we can go now. And we're also moving species around the world that never belonged in other places. So we're actually reducing the number of species that are providing services for us in the places that we would normally have them. So let's move to the next slide. So the perspective I'm showing is that around about 92% of nature is declining from what we do with the land and the sea. We're losing habitat, we're losing the services that the habitat provides for us, and this is human destruction, and out of that comes various diseases. So, and the perspective is that only 8% of it is going to be directly caused by climate change, the warming of the temperature of the earth right now. Next slide, please. So the forest is going away and it's replaced by grain and by cities. The sea has more plastic in it than fish. The sky is too hot. So what next? Next slide. So just a little bit more than 30 years ago, Paulo Costa had the bright idea, he was our Rotary International president, to have a program called Preserve Planet Earth. And this program, in it, he wanted to have 1,000 solutions to existing ecological concerns affecting their communities. And so this was a marathon he put on. And so he wanted this to be done within 6 years to have 1,000 solutions. He had 2,000 by 1996, and that was celebrated in the Rotary International Convention of that year. Then after that, the environment became a little bit more political within Rotary, and so it was pushed, there was a bit of pushback. And so by 2010, when we had the new Visions program, which basically reduced all of the actions of Rotary into 6 areas of focus, the environment sort of took a second place. It didn't have its own recognition. It was there within the other 6 areas of focus, but it was a real struggle to get any funding from the programs to directly recognize the environment. Next slide, please. So now we have a new area of focus for the environment, and it's just being acknowledged just 3 days ago. And so the way I see, we've got 6 areas of focus previously, and now we have a 7th area of focus, which now picks up the remainder of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations that now work for us within Rotary, whereas we were largely trying to get them into our programs previously. Now we have a way to do it. We can address planetary health and remove pollution and invasive species. We can protect the biodiversity. And of course, we've got to do that while producing a massive amount of food for 7.8 billion people on the earth now. We have to also produce a vast amount of energy for growing populations that require energy. And we've got to do that without climate disruption, without producing greenhouse gases and heat that's going to warm the earth around about 25% warmer than it ever has been in the last 25,000 years. So the next thing I'd like to say is we've got to look after a circular economy. We have to have an economy that sees an end product, an end use of the material that we use, rather than it going into a waste stream and becoming useless. So we want to follow nature, and nature has a circular economy. We want to do what the nature does. And finally, the last realm I see is having well-being and resilience. And this is basically recognizing that we don't want any poverty, we don't want any hunger, we want to have equality with all people, recognizing that there are traditional and cultural and economic and environmental sustainability belongs to everybody. So next slide, please. Next slide. ESRAG, ESRAG, if we can go back one. ESRAG now has grown over the last 5 years up to a little more than 1,425, and now in 83 countries as of the 1st of this month. And we have 12 regional chapters. The 12 regional chapters each focuses on actions that help Rotary clubs and districts in their projects, getting projects to be more substantial, more sustainable. And so we provide expertise, technical cadre. We can work with you with community assessments, developing networks, and so on there. And the last thing there I want to recognize is we want to get to net zero for Rotary and net zero waste. So next slide, please. So here's a challenge for you. Why not go to an ecological footprint calculator or a carbon footprint calculator and find out what your carbon footprint is? I don't really mind which carbon footprint calculator you go to, but why not try and look and see what your footprint really looks like? This is an excellent one that's been produced by USA, Belgium, and Switzerland, and it gamifies your progress through assessing what your footprint is, and it will tell you at the end how many Earths it would take to sustain everybody living the way you do. Next slide, please. The second challenge I would give you for your districts and Rotary clubs is to take on this program or something similar to it. What an Enviro Club award program would do for you, and this creates sustainability, is it will show you every project that is happening within your Rotary district, and it will also show who are the champions in your clubs. And so therefore you can build teams across your districts of those champions to do vastly more than you've been able to do previously. This produces a synergy that one can have amongst clubs to build better projects across districts and beyond. Next slide, please. And when we do projects, it's really good to capture the information. We have been not very good at doing this in the past within Rotary, but this is a program we're starting this year, basically with tree projects across India and beyond. And so what we were trying to do is not only capture the plants that are being planted, but then go back and recognize how these plants are growing. This project can be extended out, and it will be extended out to all projects within the environmental sphere of Rotary. And so we'll be able to go back and say how well these projects are doing, and we'll also be able to help with Rotarians in other areas to build projects better. And so this is something that we'll be able to do as we go forward. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide. So this is our handprint. We are now in a position to raise our hands to help Rotarians and help the world take care better. And this is my saying, when we take care of nature and where we get our energy, I believe that climate will start to take care of itself, because what we've done with nature and what we're doing with energy is what's creating the problem. So if we take care of those two things, the vapor of nature, of the climate, the atmosphere around us will become that which it should be, probably a few degrees less than what we're experiencing as a worldwide temperature right now. Thank you very much. I enjoyed speaking to you. If you've got questions for me, you can put them in the chat or send them to my email address, and I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Puttock, for such an enlightening talk. It was certainly exciting to learn about the activities that you've outlined.